Hey everybody, I'm Eric Oberempt, and you're listening to Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. We talk about real shit, what's on our minds, and don't give a fuck if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for some real shit. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. I'm your host, Eric Oberempt. So, today's exciting. Let's start with housekeeping. Share this shit. We are sponsored by fucking nobody. We are not sponsored by anybody. Nobody fucking pays the bills but this guy who's got two thumbs and pays all the fucking bills. Me. So, cost of admission, please, if you get something out of this, please share it with your networks, share it with your friends, let everybody know about Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. Now, today is actually going to be possibly, there might be one more, but possibly the last interview for Be Authentic in this space in my home, because we have built a new office and we're moving a whole podcast studio over there to get some more content for season 3. Today, my friend flew in, drove down, and came to the house because we've been trying to connect for a while. And I would like to introduce my guest today, Bradley Gardner. Brad, thanks for being here, buddy.
Thank you, bud.
I'm super excited. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a little while. Yeah. Met each other a little over 3 years ago, was it?
I'll give you a stat that I haven't.
Stat it up.
I'll give you one I hadn't told you today. Been waiting for this second to tell you.
Okay.
My 3-year sobriety date is next week.
No shit.
And when I got sober, the guy that looked me in the face and said, "No, Brad, just because you haven't been drinking for a year, you're still smoking an ounce of weed a week. You're still a fuck up." And like you said, I'll never forget it. We're sitting in a little circle and you said, "We're not really supposed to crosstalk, but I'm gonna let you know you're not sober." And then it wasn't a month later, and so it's been 3 years.
Good for you.
Day. Yeah, man, absolutely.
What day?
The 24th.
Okay, so I'll congratulate you on the 24th because you ain't there yet.
Yeah,
but
man.
Good for you, brother.
Yeah, man.
I'm proud of you.
Life has been a rocket ship since that time, man.
It's interesting how your life can change.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting how and I don't want to call it a little thing, but just a shift in your life it doesn't only change like that one thing that you're not doing anymore, right? Yeah. It changes your mindset and how you treat people and you know what I mean? Like everything, because, I mean, let's just fucking get into it. Because what I don't like doing is I don't like doing the big, long fucking story. Here's where I came, blah, blah, blah. But like, let's get into it. Like, you are a fucking menace.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you weren't a fucking nice guy.
Yeah. I mean,
nice guy. I shouldn't say that. You were probably a nice guy, but you caused some fucking problems, I assume.
I don't have a problem with controversy. And
there you go.
Definitely.
You don't have a problem with controversy, do you?
No, man.
I feel like you embrace controversy sometimes.
Jordan Peterson, who I listen to a lot, made a statement one time that made a lot of sense to me. It said, he said, in order to think, you must risk being offensive.
Yeah, I heard this.
Right.
He did a whole thing on it. It was great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of, have always kind of lived like that. I'm a big dude, so, like, fight me.
Right.
Not anymore. At one time in my life.
But growing up, that is like, you kind of do get that mentality as a bigger dude.
Yeah. I mean, and it definitely, you compound ego and all that kind of stuff that I'd had with being an addict and alcoholic and all that kind of stuff. And, well, when you first met me, I was going through a real life ego death, right? I mean, I was going through some shit. And, but, that's one thing that I
What do you mean by that? I was going through an ego death.
Wow. I had lost everything, man. And right before that, I believed everything I touched was turning to gold. Now, I was living in a fantasy, right, as addicts do, right? I mean, some of them have tinfoil on their head and they work for the CIA.
Yeah.
I was living in this thing that I was like, everything I was touching was turning to gold and everyone was below me and all this kind, and like next thing you know, I'm in a world where there's no one left to point at and blame. I was a full-on tyrant. I ran my company as a tyrant. Everybody had left me, and I'm sitting there alone now. And that really crushed me.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah, it crushed me. So, it had me in a place where I was searching for me, right? And that's how I ended up in that first AA meeting. I was just like, I don't really know that an alcoholic because I quit drinking a year ago, but I knew I needed to be somewhere where some people were going to speak some life into me.
Yeah.
And that's why I walked in there.
Right.
You know, and so I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, man, I've been sober for a year, but blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you were the one that called me out, it was like, nah. And so, it made me think. And that actually, I was already on a path at that point to rebuilding myself. I was already diving into that, but, y'all opened up a path to me that I didn't know existed and made it to where I was able to like start finding myself.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what it is. But at the same time.
And really living.
Yeah, bro. I mean, well, at that point, I hated my wife.
Wife or life?
Wife.
Oh, okay.
Wife, dude. Wife.
Life.
Represented my family. The first 2 years of my second son's life, I was gone more than I was home just because I hated home. Really? I hated everything, right? And, man, I've never had a stronger relationship with my wife. I've never had. So, I mean, like, just finding happiness, finding peace. God, peace, what that means. Never knew what that meant. I come from a pretty rough story into peace. I don't deserve peace. Right. And it's like, so that being what it is it all started that day when you called me out, man. That's why I've been so excited to, catch up with you on this thing. Cause it really is full circle it started when you looked me in the face and just called me on my shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that being said, in order to think, you have to risk a little bit of controversy, and you being a guy that doesn't mind stepping up and calling someone out.
Yeah.
It changed me. So, it's not necessarily so much on that deep a level, but like when I do have controversial things happen online, I see the metrics. It's 20, 30 people in the comments, and it's, all hell's breaking loose, but there's 1,500 people reading, and it's a learning session for a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah.
Whether or not I'm right or wrong isn't what's important. It's
right.
So that's kind of why I don't mind
one
being
thing
there.
One thing I will say is that even if I don't agree with what you're saying, online, social media, whatever it is, I still always get a good fucking laugh.
Yeah.
I still get a good fucking laugh every time. Even if I think you're like, you know what, Brad, I think you're a little fucking off base on this one. Maybe. I still laugh my dick off though, just because you are very quick.
Yeah.
Right. And I love people that are quick.
Yeah.
Right. On retorts and clever.
Well,
I don't like people that aren't clever.
So most of the time, like when I say something, I think out, it's not like I'm just off the wall firing shit, right? I'm usually have some underlying point that I'm dragging out.
Yeah.
I'm usually setting a trap in some way, So it's, a lot of times, and my point may not come across the way I see it either. I'm not, man, I'm no more intelligent than the next guy. It's just, the reason why I created the lump sum contractor group was because I got banned from another group. And I wanted a place where we can go in there, and if we have to motherfuck each other to get to the bottom of
what'd you get banned from? Level playing field?
Yeah. So, and it was because, oh yeah. Well, so Steve, I've reached out to Steve. Steve's happy to let me back in. I don't know if any of us know how to get me back in. Once you ban somebody, I don't know how you unban them. and now I got my own group. I don't really care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, they got a great thing going, and I don't, and my shit probably don't need to be in their group. Right?
That's not a group for motherfucking people.
Right.
Right.
Mine is.
Yes, yours is a group for motherfucking people.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely correct. So one of the reasons, and we spoke about this right before we started, that one of the reasons that you were excited about coming on the show is because you're everything that you go on or deal with, you're talking about fucking roofing, and you're talking about lump sum, and you're talking about, and I'm the same way, right? Like, I've been doing this thing for a long ass time, right? Like, I love roofing. It's given me the life that I want. I mean, I'm starting another office. Like, you know what I mean? You know what it's like. You start another office, kind of like a new kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get to watch it grow and, all that kind of stuff. And that's fun, right? And that's fun. But at the same time, it's not necessarily what we are overly passionate about. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, man. My online life is definitely the iceberg approach.
Yep.
I mean, you get 10% of what I am.
Yep.
And the rest of it is, and that's why I was saying I was excited to do this, because there were all these other podcasts about that. And I knew that coming here we get to get into real stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't, I mean, you can Google my name at this point and pull up 5 podcasts of me talking about the same shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I can't wait to do Eric's because we're going to talk about something besides that.
Yeah. We'll get into something real. So back. Let's back up a little bit, because for the audience, right? The purpose of the show is obviously, a couple different reasons. One, obviously, is about authenticity and being authentic when you're here, right? That was the original thesis, if you will, right, of the show, was that if somebody comes on the show and they're not being authentic, I shut the fucker down.
Yeah.
Right. What's been funny is that that's never happened because people figured it out, and no one that would ever do that would come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't get those people to even, sniff the idea, which is fine. Right. Like that's fine. Like I wouldn't do it for shock value anyway. Right. Cause that's not me either. But what the other purpose of the show is to show some people that are listening that there is hope. Right. And that's something we talk about in recovery a lot, is like that there is hope, right? Even when you're fucking at the depths and you're sitting in your shit and you're like, what's the fucking point? Right. It's like, that there is hope, and that, guys like you and guys like me have went through some shit in our lives, and we've come through to kind of where we are right today. And today, let's jump into the future. I mean, today you've got an extremely successful business, working in how many states?
Several states, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, really nice house.
Yeah.
Like
fucking dog with mange.
He doesn't have mange.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's a whole story.
Yeah.
But man, I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
I'm just not.
Right.
Like, I came up and I'm supposed to be dying in an oil field or something, I'm just not supposed to be who I am. And, that's, so everybody, you can when walking down the street, people ask me how I'm doing. My response is always living the dream. Right. Right. Because like I am, you couldn't fuck this up if you tried. It's so far past where I'm supposed to be. And like that happened somehow. Right. And it's 100% because I found a wife that made me a better man. My children made me a better man. People like you and Paul and other folks that have spoken in my life made me a better man. And I owe that to people. Right. And so that's just the truth of it.
So let's talk about where you were.
Okay.
Let's talk about where you were before that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, cause how old are you now?
I'm 35, I think.
35.
Yeah. So I'm either 35 or 36. Last year, what happened was I thought I turned 36 and I think I turned 35, and my grandmother called me out on it. And I was like, Mama, I promise you I'm 36. And she hit me with, no, you're 35. So I think I'll be 36 this year. 6 out dozen.
Yeah. That actually happened to my grandpa. I'll never forget. He turned 66 and he thought he was going to turn 65. And on his birthday, I was like, happy 66th birthday. He's like, fuck you, I'm 65. I'm like, you're not. I know what year you were born and I can do math. He was pissed off that whole day because he lost a year.
See, I had the opposite. I gained a year. I was like, yes.
Yeah, you won. So where'd you grow up?
So I'm originally, I guess you could say Natchez, Mississippi. We never lived in the same place more than, long enough for us to get evicted or something.
Right.
My dad was a Baptist preacher / car salesman / police officer sometimes, and then ended up being a pill addict and all that stuff. My mom.
Okay, so he had it too.
Yeah, well, it was a crazy story. My dad was like 550 pounds. That was huge, and he had gastric bypass.
Okay,
and then found a lump, so he had cancer now. Then he gets hit by an 18-wheeler, and he had every narcotic known to man being shoved in his face, and that's when we completely lost him. But it was before that. My dad was a pathological liar.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always stuck with me on how it works was rigorous honesty, right? So my dad that was going to happen because my dad can't be honest, right? He's not capable. And it's like those that aren't capable never seem to figure it out, right? So my dad's one that's not capable of being honest. And he was always kind of a manipulator. Like he used being a pastor to as a survival technique. It wasn't because he was, in my opinion, maybe his view on it's different, but and my
Is
mom
he still alive?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he may watch this. I'm I'm completely open
Fair
about
enough.
it.
Yeah, I mean, he said he got hit by a fucking 18-wheeler, so I thought maybe that killed him.
No. He was in a SUV.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, go on.
So my mom was a pretty tyrannical person. And, I mean, she had, me and my brother have kind of dug into this a good bit. She, growing up my grandfather was kind of a gangster, and, her mom shot his balls off in the front yard in front of him one day. And
Stop. His mom.
No,
What?
my grandmother shot my grandfather in the nuts
With a gun.
with a police officer's gun that was there for the domestic disturbance.
She took
the police officer's gun and shot him in the dick. Yeah, bro, I come from some savages. That's what I'm saying.
What in the actual fuck?
Yeah, so if you can imagine, so my mom was 16 when my grandmother threw her out, called my dad, who was 21, and her boyfriend at the time, and said, come get her, she's homeless. 9 months later, I'm born. I'm born into turmoil, right?
Jesus.
Yeah, so had this life of just high stress, anger, crazy household where, we had to be, the perfect little preacher family in the daytime, but at home it was, just hate, right? And that just
financially
horrible.
Okay.
Right. My grandparents supported us the whole time, right?
Okay.
That's why I say I'm from Natchez, because that's where they were from, and that was really the only home we had. We would, end up there sometimes.
Yeah.
So, when I was about 13, my parents divorced. My mom and I really clashed real hard. I end up, in a mental hospital, and then the judge ends up sending me off to military school and all this kind of stuff. And did a couple years there, and came out of that, and I had been on my own since.
How'd that go for you, military school?
I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but like being an adult looking back on it, it probably gave me that little bit of structure that I've been able to build on.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
It was definitely like, so in there I end up like leading a fight club and like a gambling racket and all this kind of stuff. Like it was a wild time in itself. But I mean, you're in there with like,
what kind of gangster was your grandpa?
Oh, like a real one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of those that like, like the judges and the lawyers and everybody, when they needed things done, he did them. And like when he died, it was like the motorcycle gangs came and like paid homage.
So it was like a motorcycle gang kind of thing.
No, like he was like,
or was he like a Ray Donovan?
He's probably above that, right? And
he was
so,
like a fixer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You say that, right?
Okay.
Like he was a big dude, and he was one of those guys that really like handled business, like kind of,
and that was his profession.
Well, I mean, he was a bail bondsman by day, but
okay,
but his profession,
gotcha.
So
that stuff interests me. I just, you know what I mean, like just different paths and things like that just interests the fuck out of me.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, and then at this point in my life, like seeing how it all adds up is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, and then total opposite, my other grandfather was a CPA, partner in a CPA firm. My grandmother was a financial secretary at Parkway Baptist Church for 40-something years.
On your mom's side?
No, my dad's side. Right? So, and then...
So mom's side was wild.
Yeah.
Dad's side was a little more straight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But my dad was like this black sheep of the family kind of thing, right? So, I mean, like...
Gotcha.
And so, anyway, it was a thing. So, when I came out of military school, there was no bridling me, right? I wasn't to be, I didn't listen. I wasn't the only thing that probably kept me in school was I was a pretty good football player, and that was going to be my ride. And
right.
I think, but I had an epiphany about all that too. When about a year into sobriety, I'm sitting there and, y'all always talk about fear-based stuff. Yep. And, you're talking to the guy that's not afraid of anything. Like you're talking to a guy that's decided I'm going to die and laugh at it. Right. I've always been the one to fight everybody. I've always been the first one in. Right. And I'm sitting there one day and I'm watching my kids play, and my son Brian, who was 2 at the time, wanted a toy from Brody, and he didn't give it to him. So my son Brian picks up a golf club, wraps Brody upside the head with it. Well, Hunter jumps up, spanks him, puts him in the corner, this kind of thing. And she comes and sits down. She's like, Brad, I'm really worried about him. Because like, what happens if he turns out violent? I said, babies too. He's just, they're all little tyrants. He's not going to turn out violent.
Yeah.
And she said, well, how do you know that you were violent? And my wife, who has never had more than half a glass of wine, like ended up with me, and she watched me and knew who I was and heard all my stories and all that. And I had to think about it. I was like, well, why did I end up violent? Right. And turns out it hit me like I had a fear of people thinking I was weak.
Sure.
I was insecure because I come from a poor family and all these other problems and all this stuff. So when I would go to the parties, if you could drink 6 beers, I could drink 12. Mm-hmm. If you could smoke a joint, I could smoke 3 blunts. Right. That was just how, if you were ready to, if you had an issue, I flashed out to level 10 and we just beat the shit out of you. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was the way I moved with everything, which led me down a path of being, I heard it said once, there's only 2 ways for young males to climb the hierarchy. And that's with money, I had none, or through violence. I went violence, right? So everywhere I went, I got respect because I'd fuck you up.
Sure.
Right? And that's how I lived for a long time, which meant I was a drug dealer, which meant I was, supposed to, if I'm, and anything about me, if if I'm going to do it, it has to be level 10, right? So if I was going to be a drug dealer, I had to sell all of them. And that meant that if you were in my way, then I had to talk to you about it, right?
Right.
So that was the way I lived. And it was, it's how I built me with this huge ego of everything turns to gold kind of thing, because I had this ego of I couldn't be touched.
When did you recognize the violence was a problem?
I don't know that I recognized it until I got sober.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a story like as recent as I was in Colorado in 2018.
Okay.
And things weren't necessarily going well. It was kind of going south for me. The guy I was working with was, doing the old roofer screwed me out of money thing. And
I never heard that story.
Yeah, well, I've lived it a few times now. And I'm out there and I go downtown, go get fucked up in Colorado by myself. I'm just by myself, right? I'm in this whole lonely place. And this guy and his buddy walked by me, and I was walking down the sidewalk, and they were just trying to strike up a conversation with the random guy that's by himself. And I turned around and beat the fuck out of both of them, right there on the side. And they're like, their girlfriends are screaming at me to stop, and I'm stomping his head and all this. So, I mean, like, I didn't even know it was the issue. It was just how I would release anger, right? And you wouldn't know how many people I've damaged that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, people I can't make amends to would never be able to find, like, I've done that. And so.
Which is why you have to continue making living amends.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's so.
Because that's not the Brad I know.
No. So it's one of the things that probably saved me, one of the thoughts was the quote that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
It's better to be a monster and choose not to be one.
Yep.
And I found peace with
too,
man. When I tell you I was going through some stuff, I got 100 hours of Jordan Peterson under my belt.
Yeah, I remember hearing his quote that.
Because like the thing is like that's how I made peace with it, right? I know that I have a monster in me, right? I know that it's there, and it got created through whatever it got created,
right?
But I choose not to be him, right? And so that's why it's not the Brad you know, right? Because and it's genuine change. It's a completely different person.
I would
person,
agree,
right?
because I mean I can sniff bullshit.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Like I know if you're a crazy motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've been around crazy motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Right. I know what their eyes look like. I know what they look like. Like you can look in somebody's eyes and know if they're a crazy motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right. I can tell that you were.
Yeah.
Right. Oh fuck. What was I going to say? Oh, I know. So I saw, just because you're talking about Jordan Peterson, I saw him at D2D Con.
Yeah.
So we took the podcast at D2D Con. He was speaking there, And I was talking to a couple different people about him because I love his shit, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I love listening to him. But I can only listen to him in like small snippets. I have a hard time listening to him for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody, I was talking to Brandon Hall at the event, and he was also like huge fan, throwing some quotes out, you know, whatever, just kind of like we're doing right now. And I looked at him, I said, you know, I go, as much as I love that guy and respect him, I don't think that I would ever want to sit down and hang out with him.
Oh, bro, that would be my dream.
But would it?
Yeah.
Because like, I feel like he doesn't laugh.
No,
He doesn't think anything's funny.
he's full of pain, man. Yeah, for sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how enjoyable that would really be. Like, to maybe soak up knowledge, but like to actually have a conversation like we're having, I don't think you could do that with him.
Man,
Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe I'm wrong.
I see how you would see that. But for me,
I could be totally wrong.
For me, that guy, his work, I mean, I watched everything he had. I read every book he has.
Yeah.
Because like it was what I clung to. It's how I rebuilt me.
Do you read a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm out a lot. I read, you know, like when I have time. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, work on a book a month anyway.
Yeah.
At that period, I was trying to absorb anything.
Yep.
I got a bookshelf that's respectable, right? But you know, his outlook was rooted from working in prisons, working with damaged people.
Right.
So his advice comes from a real deep spot, like way down in Dante's Inferno, right? And from a deep spot, and it resonated with me.
Sure.
So I would love to, you know, pick that brain for as long as it'd let me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm weird, you know, whatever. Like, I want to be able to tell jokes and fucking tell dick jokes and, you know what I mean? Like, have a good fucking laugh and whatever.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like I'd land a fucking doozy and he'd be like, okay, I'm kind of a serious man. I don't, you know, like,
Maybe, you know,
that would be disappointing for me, right?
I've seen him speak once. I got some tickets to go see him in Nashville once. And, you know, I was definitely fangirling in there. Oh, God, yeah, man. I almost went on his bus. His bus was parked outside, and I'm like, you know, I'm just brave enough to pop that door open and go say hello.
Yes, you are.
But I didn't
do it.
No, man, you know,
That's hilarious.
Felt like there might be somebody bigger than me in there. Who knows?
That's funny.
But yeah, man. He's, you know, it reshaped a lot of my thought process around him, and that's how it happened. But, you know, man, it was.
What do you do today? What do you do today to maintain your state that you get to be in now? Because I like to give little tips, right, to people.
I teach how to maintain it to my people.
You give back.
Yeah.
You give back and help.
You know, I haven't been in the AA group for a minute. You know, I don't know if you remember, you know, God, I'm trying to think of his name, Jordan, not my guy that died not long ago. When I was deep in the group, he reached out one day. He was in the hospital, kind of on his deathbed, right?
Okay.
And I had not done the sponsor thing. I really wasn't prepared to do the sponsor thing.
Sure.
And but like he was like, I need to talk to somebody now, and I gave him a number, and he called me, and we spent 2 hours on the phone of him just like overdosed on heroin, you know, rambling. And you know, I reached out to Paul and you guys, and we got him in rehab. He gets out of rehab, crashes his car into a jail, get him into another rehab, and you know he was doing really well. I mean, calling me every chance he got was really, you know, connecting with me. And he asked me to be a sponsor. And I said, man, I don't know anything about getting over opiates. I'm not with you every day. He was like in Georgia, and I was like,
right.
I'm here for you every time I'll answer the phone. And I did every time, but I want you to get a real sponsor. And he was doing fan-fucking-tastic, dude. I mean, he had color. And I saw him at Win the Storm here in Texas. And he had got out to come to that and was, you know, working out of his halfway house for a roofing company. And I got to see him, man. He looked like a real human again. And I was like, man, making a difference in a dude's life. He gets out, the day he gets out, he goes and ODs and dies in his fucking bathroom. And for a minute, I just was like, I don't even want to try to help another one.
Yeah, I get that.
So I took that energy and went to, I'm going to grow my people.
Right.
The people that are, I got a lot of employees, and the people that are there, I'm going to grow them. And I really put that energy there.
Yeah.
So
can I give you
go ahead.
Can I give
Please.
you something?
Yeah.
So what I'll say to that is I fucking get it.
Yeah.
We've had more than one person that we've dealt with Roofers in Recovery that has a similar story, right? Yeah. He's not the only one. Other people watching this, can have the wrong impression, be like, wow, you guys are failures then, right? But that's obviously not, that's not the case. This is such a hard space to be in, right? In the recovery space and helping people, because it's a very small percentage of people that get it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a very small percentage of people that are able to recover. Everybody has the ability, right? But a lot of it has to do with what are you willing to do it, right? And one of the things that you have to be willing to do, and you've done it in a different arena, is give back, right? You have to do the steps, right? You have to do the steps. You have to read the book, just so you can learn a different way to live, right? Because that's what it is, right? It's not a step-by-step process on how to not drink again, right? Like, yes, that will happen, right? Like you'll stop drinking, fine, but it teaches you another way to live. And one of the things that I joke about is that all of these different masterminds and groups and fucking, and I'm part of numerous ones, right? Like I need that stuff in my life.
Sure.
But they're all they do is fucking steal the principles of AA and repackage it and charge you $35,000.
So not to turn this into the Jordan Peterson's podcast, but he talks.
We'll get him on the show now.
He was talking about and that process, that is a mental healing process that works for a lot of things.
Correct.
It's not just like it's stolen. It's the way to recover from betrayal.
Yes.
It's the way to recover from, like when your spouse cheats on you and you end up a divorce, the only way to go about it is admit that there was a problem, take responsibility for it, make amends, give forgiveness. Right.
Yes.
So that's the only way to mentally recover from anything.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's so much stolen as it is just the blueprint.
Correct.
Right?
It is the blueprint, right? And then it gets repackaged. Right. One thing that I will say though, just because we're here and we're talking, and like this just turns into us talking and having fun or whatever, but is your recovery and your life and your story and you as a human mean a lot to me.
Sure.
And because of that, I want to make sure that you don't lose focus of what got you there.
Sure.
And part of that is, even though there's going to be some failures, is still being willing, and I know you are, but still being willing to go outside of yourself and help those folks and be part of that community as well, because there's so many people out there that will connect with you because of that, and not because of how great you are in business and you know what I mean, and helping the people in your company, but like your story is so powerful, and your history and where you're at now. There's so many people that can be saved from that. It's our duty and it's our responsibility as people in recovery to give that back so you can keep it, right?
I agree.
And I know that you do a lot of things anyway. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just reminding you because I care about what happens to you, and I don't want you to be a story 5 years down the road because you got upset about such a bad thing.
It's not so much that I don't want to do it because
sense,
it does. Right. Well, see, the thing is, I watched the energy that you and Paul put in it, and I'm not at a place where I can spare that. You guys
to do what?
To pour into the energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I try to do,
I'm not either.
Well, so I mean, I'm still building my empire.
Yeah.
I'm chasing down some other things. I have other purpose in my life than just saving addicts.
No,
right?
100%. I'm not saying that. Yeah.
And it's like, it's noble to watch that happen. And God knows I want to be a part of it as much as I can. So when I find one, I try to help.
Yeah. And I know you do. I hope you didn't take that.
That's not. I didn't.
Okay.
The thing is like, I'm trying to use what I have to do. I'm trying to change this industry. Yeah. I'm trying to hold it to a higher standard. I'm trying to take down a dragon that's terrorizing the village, right? And called the insurance companies, right? And those are the things that I'm trying to do. And I want my life to be something that makes a mark in that world.
So, you know what? Let's dig into that a little bit.
All right.
Okay. Let's dig into that a little bit, even though we don't do a lot of work talk here, but I do want to dig into that a little bit, because say the phrase again, because you said you want to take down.
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah, man.
So tell me what that means, because I think we might differ a little bit on this opinion.
Okay.
Okay. Take it down how and why?
Well, we'll start with why. What started when I ended up as an insurance agent. Mm-hmm. I was there.
You were an agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had found myself, it's a crazy story. My schedule was like this. I had gone from being a traveling car salesman to I schemed my way into being an agent. And somehow or another, these people gave me a job. So by day, I would show up dressed up like this in my office where I was an agent, and I'd get there at like 11 o'clock. I'd answer my messages. About 11:45, I'd go to lunch. I'd come back at 1:30, answer my messages. 3 o'clock, I was out the door. And I was making $109,000 a year, 25 years old, right? And yeah, gold.
Yeah.
Right? Working 5 hours a day. I'd leave, go home, take a nap, go to the bar, be a bouncer, fight all night, sell drugs out the back door,
right?
Party till 3 a.m, go to sleep, wake up, go to the office at 11. I did that every day.
Right.
Right. And I had a cush life, and I was my face on the baseball field. I'm this one person by day. I'm this other person by night. Yep. Right. Fueled by alcohol and Adderall.
Yep.
Right. And so we had a big hailstorm come through, and everybody in my book of business's roof was fucked. And the adjuster was going out of his way to make sure claims were being underpaid, and it kind of affected his pay.
Right.
And he was getting bigger bonuses because he was underpaying claims. That's the way the system's set up. Okay. And
was he an IA or an in-house?
No, he was in-house.
In-house,
right?
Okay.
So I ended up kind of going around him, hooking up with a roofing company, and I was sending invoices into the home office. And he gets word, goes to his boss, goes to my boss. They come down, and after an hour-long conversation of them not being able to explain to me why we weren't paying properly, it was, look, just stay out of claims or else. And me being the hothead 25-year-old, I said, I'll tell you what, I'll go with or else.
Right.
And I walked out the door with a mission on, I'm going to burn this thing down.
Okay.
So a lot of resentment that I was carrying, right, into being, I was a roofer to fight insurance companies. Fast forward to maturing through that idea a little bit, I go to these storms, and I live in hurricanes. Mm-hmm. Most people may experience a hurricane once in their life if they're unlucky enough.
Maybe.
Right,
yeah.
I live in them every year. I see people's lives torn apart, right? Every year I go and I'm helping people put their lives back together, and I watch while insurance companies use fraud, use unethical tactics to completely take away what people have, and that's their home, mm-hmm. right? And to me, insurance companies, I relate it to my dragon that's at the top of the mountain, sitting on top of a pot of gold, terrorizing the village. Mm-hmm. And I'm this guy marching up the hill, going to go slay the dragon. And it wouldn't be a dragon if it couldn't kill you, by the way. But it's my dragon. So that's the why.
Okay.
How and what does that mean? I have a, I guess, self-proclaimed duty to change the way insurance is operating with people.
Okay.
And so we're doing that. I'm pretty active with the APA, right? And that's why I'm so active with him, because I love Doug and what he's doing over there.
Yep.
There's other things that we're after, like class action lawsuit for bad faith and not bad faith, but price fixing and antitrust laws that we're after to hopefully hold them accountable for some of the things that they've done on that front. I would not care, and I mean this, if we took the whole industry and turned it upside down. If I lost my job, if there was no longer insurance, I would feel it was a success, because insurance to me is a manipulation of people in good faith. Back before insurance was a thing, if your house burned down, the community would get together and we'd help rebuild your house, right? And what happened is insurance is a play on people's fear. It's, hey, you may lose everything, so give me some money and I'm going to get filthy rich while we get rich off of your fear. And I hate it.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm doing everything I can, what my little change in the world might be. And I may just be picking up one starfish at a time and throwing it back in the ocean.
Yeah.
But I'm just saving a starfish if I can. And if I can save one, I save it, right? And that's my entire outlook on it, right? It's completely and totally to make a change on how people are treated by their insurance companies. So it's my purpose, right?
So, okay, I get that.
Sure.
Totally get that. 'Cause I mean, I've seen it. Like, I know how this all rolls, right? And the reason that I asked the question is because, and the reason that I asked, what does it look like, right? And you did answer that. But I'm a little afraid of your answer, just in the fact that you would be okay. Well, I don't disagree with the fact that, like before there was insurance, right? We all band together. We all, put things back together. Pate actually told me a story that I didn't know of, like how the first insurance company came to be.
Lloyd's of London.
Well, the
bar, by the way.
The story that he told me, and maybe he's full of shit, that's Pate, but the story that he told me was that it was like literally at a church somewhere in London or whatever, and that the pastor, preacher, or whatever, passed the bucket the first time, and then passed the bucket the second time because there was a fire in the town and somebody's house burnt down, and then they all collected, blah, 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 and then they started collecting every week so that if anybody else's house got burnt down, and then all of a sudden everybody started joining that church so that they could be part of the second bucket that went around, so that if their house burnt down or if something happened, this, that, and the other, right? I mean,
same premise. It's not a concept that's been foreign. I mean, it's existed in different forms for a long time.
Right.
Right. That is, as we know it today, and Lloyd's of London, who is older than America, by the way,
right,
collects more in premium every year than America collects in tax dollars. This is a privately owned company.
Yeah.
That is a giant.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is people have this idea that insurance is the church in good faith.
Right.
And what it is it's a gigantic
and I'm definitely
monster.
not saying that it is, right? I'm saying that that's how it started. Yeah. Because it's definitely not now, right? It's definitely not now. My question to you is should the ultimate goal be figuring out how to burn it down, or since we are where we are, is a more realistic conversation and approach to figure out how to protect our policyholders the best way that we can by, and I do not want to steal, I'm not trying to steal, Steve's line of like, let's play nice, right? At all, right? I'm not trying to do that. But is there another path?
Let me approach that question with a couple
of questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know where you're going. Let me approach that with a couple of questions. Is it, first off, is there anything more evil than profiting off of people's fear? Is there anything more of a definition of evil than using a system to profit from fear? Because if fear is evil, then is there anything that can be? Is it real life? And I'm not talking about from a magical standpoint. I'm talking about real life evil. And if that is the case, if in my mind we now maybe answer the question as, no, that's pretty much the most evil thing you can think of, is to intimidate and scare people into making a profit off of them.
Right.
Then is it okay, even if it hurts, to allow it to happen? Even if it is something that we know would, even if running into the fire and you know you're gonna die is the outcome, should you still not run into the fire if it's to fight evil? And so
Right. I see that.
with that being said, it's like, I can't, in my mind, turn around how not fighting it is the right thing, right? And if and for me, for all the things that I've done,
Is the purpose to make real change, or is the purpose genuinely to, and I know that you understand like this is never going to happen, but like, is the purpose to make a change by being so extreme, right? That change can come, because that's the only way change ever comes.
that's the only way change comes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But
So
like,
that's the purpose.
Okay,
Right? The
right.
purpose is to be so extreme that it has to change.
And so here, and here's my issue with that, is that's the same argument for the riots.
No,
It's their theory.
well, let's maybe dig into that a little bit. The riots aren't maybe, but
Nobody listens unless there's violence.
So, well, I'm not condoning violence.
No. But
and we're not down there burning the buildings down. So let's say that.
but you do want to burn it down.
I definitely want the change to happen, and maybe there is something to be said about change, and good change can come from that. But the doctrine of the riots and what's behind it is where the flaw is, right? In my mind, right? So the riots that have happened were based on lies, right? Like, for instance, the idea that police officers are running around killing black people for the fun of it is a lie.
Right.
Right. That's just not, it's not statistically founded at all.
Sure.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The idea that the identity politics and the idea that people are oppressed because of their race is just false. So when you're trying to promote change on a false narrative, well, that's probably not the same thing as trying to promote change on. I don't really see an argument for where my narrative's false.
No, but they don't either.
Well, that doesn't mean
And I don't
that it's
agree
not.
with that. Right. I'm just saying, like, playing devil's advocate, for a moment, like, I think it's more of a, in my mind, it seems like to whoever the group is that feels like they're being wronged, right? That to them, that you can take whatever extreme measures are necessary so that you have a means to an end, so that there is change of some type. Understanding that maybe this change that you're saying you're really trying to do isn't necessarily the be all end all, but it's some change in the middle.
So if we accepted that every time, we'd still have Hitler.
I don't disagree.
Right.
And like, and I'm not, and again, this isn't me disagreeing.
No, I'm with you.
Right. It's just a lot of what I talk about. Okay. And anybody that watches knows this, right? 80% of my fucking speeches and my keynotes and everything that I talk about on here is about like conversations like this, right? And being able to see things from another person's point of view by having empathy, whether you agree with them or not, right? So what I try to do in every conversation that I have is put myself in the other party's shoes and at least understand where they're coming from and why, even if I think they're batshit crazy. I had to do this all during COVID.
Well, you can do this with Hitler, like my last example, right? So, I mean, for what it's worth, as far as a leader goes and for what he did for his people, probably one of the most influential leaders ever.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Pretty sure he was on Time Magazine for that, wasn't he?
Well, exactly, Man of the Year.
Yeah.
Right? So, you can, that's what makes problems so hard to get to the bottom of. But it was also rooted in an evil mindset.
Yeah.
Right? It was rooted in this evil mindset of supremacy.
Yeah.
Right? In my mind, the idea and the current state of insurance and the way it works is rooted in an evil place. It plays on people's fear. And that's the root.
Yeah.
And then from that grows, you can say, well, no, we do good because their house burned down and we helped them build their house back. So, well, Hitler could justify what he was doing, and probably you could think of a lot of things that he did was good as well. But he also murdered a lot of people, right?
Yes, he did do that.
So at some point,
Yeah.
at some point it has to be stood against.
Yeah.
And the world burned because of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So do I think that we're going to actually have some sort of burning fire revolt against insurance? No. But what I do think is a lot of people could end up being overthrown. Right. I do think that the current state of things could be drastically different.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with that. I think that it's just, I think that I have a different way of trying to go about it.
Sure.
Right. You know, and I'm working on my angles, right, that I'm doing as well, you know, in the background, that we won't get into that today.
Yeah, sure.
But, you know, there's things that I'm working on as well, because I see the issues, right, that are in our industry that are affecting policyholders, because at the end of the day, that's who it's about, right? It's about policyholders.
I don't mind debating the managed repair program if you like.
I am not managed repair program.
Well, I know that folks are, that we know, and I love them. And I understand his mindset on it of like, can we just play nice, right? And I understand how that's coming together. What I also know is every other time, and I hold hope for that, by the way, and I've told him this to his face, I hold hope because if there's anyone that I can believe that would hold a noble cause to that, would be him.
Who?
Paul.
Oh, I'm involved in that.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm 100%
well,
involved in that. What I was saying is that we're not a managed repair program.
Well,
it's a different entity, because here's why it is, right? Here's why, because it is, well, this is ego. This is 100% ego. So fuck you. It's ego, right? But the reason that I know that if I'm part of something and if I'm leading the charge on something, I know for a fact.
Know where your heart will be.
I know where it is.
Yep.
Right. And I know where his is.
That's why I said that I support it.
And I know everybody involved. I know where our hearts are, and that we're trying to change the industry for good, just like you are, just in a different
Here's
manner.
my fear
Yep.
on it. What happens when y'all aren't here anymore? Because if we look at the past, everything that happens, it gets manipulated.
What happens if we don't do it?
If you're not,
they do?
Hey, what, you know, what, talk about catch-22.
That's always been my comment to everybody that comes to me that has a problem with it. I said, well, if you don't want us to do it, that means you're going to let them. Yeah. You're going to let them build it and dictate exactly what it looks like, and no one's going to even have your interests represented at the table. And
been very open when asked about it, and directly to Paul and everybody involved.
And we haven't got a chance to talk about it.
No, and that's why I'm being vague about it.
No, it's fine. I mean, I don't want to put words in Paul's mouth or anything like that.
For sure.
Like, you can put them in mine.
That's why I'm being vague about it.
No,
because
but you don't have to be vague, because I'm just as involved as he is. I own the company just as much as he does.
And that,
right?
And I wouldn't have it any other way. I couldn't imagine a more perfect setup that I would support.
Yeah.
Right. And the only way I would be involved, if y'all were involved, that's the only way I'd be a part of something like that, because I watch what happens to contractors and on other types of management programs, be it different form or whatever they are. What ends up happening is those guys end up working and going broke and going out of business. And who suffers? It's the homeowner that suffers, or the building owner that suffers, because they end up having to settle for subpar stuff.
Yep.
And I know that y'all know that, and I know that you're actively combating that on the front end.
Yes.
Right? So I know that. So I haven't brought it up. You know me, if I had a problem with it, it'd have been public.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I don't. I love that y'all are going that angle. And I
think it's why we're some of the only people that could do it.
Yeah.
I truly believe, and again, I know that sounds super egotistical, but like, I feel like we're some of the only people that could put it together and make it work, because I think that people, at least, even if they don't like us or like the idea, whatever it is, I think they know that where we come from is always a good place.
For sure. I'm with you. So what does my future look like? The third part of the question was, what does it look like? It looks like a combination of all of our efforts hopefully makes some sort of change for the good. Can I tell you
I
tell you what that is?
Yeah.
No, one thing you can't do is predict the future because there's way too many variables.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, man, as long as we all are out here having these conversations and learning and growing, and all of us are fighting at our angles, the end result hopefully wins the good wins.
And I agree with that. And I think I think what you just said is so important. And it's about being open to having the conversations.
Heck yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean that we all have to agree. We could sit me, you, and Steve in the same room and we don't have to agree, but can we have a conversation? Yeah. Right. Maybe we can, maybe we can't.
I've tried. He won't. Yeah, Steve, this is your chance.
Yeah. No. I mean, and I'll be honest, like I get along with Steve, right? I don't agree.
Here's the
with
thing.
Steve.
I know for a fact you wouldn't like. I just hosted an event today where I was teaching contractors, where I talked about not just. I don't get in there and harp about how insurance companies are the ones.
For the record, Steve will probably watch this because the only other ones that he's watched are when I interviewed James McClenny.
So one of the last podcasts I did, I ended up getting a phone call directly from him. Because I half-assed mentioned him. It wasn't even an important part of the conversation. Yeah. And him and I were, you should see that email thread. Yeah, so that being said, I talk about how contractors' greed helped get us to this point.
Right.
And it's true.
Yeah.
And I have been outspoken against AOBs since I got in this business.
I've never understood why people thought they were a good idea.
They're a horrible idea.
Yeah.
Well, look what they did.
Right.
Right. And all it did was give a platform to make it harder.
Correct.
And it was the only excuse was motivated by greed.
Yes.
So I can't subscribe to it.
Yep.
And I've taken a lot of flack for being, why well, you hate OOB? That's the blah. Here's all the reasons why they're great. Yeah. It's wrong.
Yeah.
The only reason it's here is because it's for the greed.
Correct.
I say that. I'm one of the ones that says that. So I promise you, I would almost be willing to wager that if Steve and I were able to sit at a table, if he would, we would probably agree on a lot more than he thinks I would agree on. We probably would get to the point. And who knows, maybe we walk away disagreeing because there's some things, he's caught by that industry that I used to be in.
Yep.
I was on that side of the fence. The reason why I stopped being a car salesman, I said, I want to go do something where I'm helping people as a salesman, and went to go sell insurance because I thought I was on that fence.
Yeah.
Then I lived it.
Yep.
Right. And I live it every year. Right. I see the effects of it on the ground level. I've challenged him to come join me in the field. I can introduce him to how some of these policies are working, like this deductible law that we have here in Texas, and the things that the negative effects it's really having. Mm-hmm. I understand it's his baby. I understand that he wanted it to be something that in his mind was a great thing. It ended up not being that, and that's the truth of it. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's what it is. So there's, I know we would get along with 99% of our stuff.
Tell me more about that. Why? Tell me more about
the deductible law.
Yeah.
Well, aside from the fact, and this isn't even really where I stand on it. I know a lot of people, because hoteling kind of pushed it this direction, go down to the idea of, well, this can allow people to steal jobs from us because they can cover up deductibles and we can't. Well, I hadn't seen evidence that that's even happened. And, well, so be it if it does. Like, I mean, you're not going to lose me over $1,000. I'll outsell you over $1,000. So that's not really ever been my thing. What aggravates me about it is what's happening is insurance companies are using it as a ploy to stall money. Mm. They're saying, nope, we're not releasing depreciation until we've got a canceled check or blah, 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 blah. Well, what if they use the ACV on some of the other things to help pay their deductible, which is completely and totally legal? Right. Well, how do we show that? It's insurance is saying, and the adjuster saying, nope.
Can't we show that?
Huh?
Can't we show that?
So maybe you could show it, but what I've had happen to me in my San Antonio office was, even if you try to explain that to the desk adjuster, he says, nope, I'm not releasing it. So now I've got a couple options. I can go and get a check and take a copy of it and hand it back and send that in and say, yep, they paid it, and then they'll release it. Now I got to start lying.
Right.
I'm not after that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like what has happened is insurance companies are using it as a way to disrupt my cash flow, which severely hurts contractors' business.
Absolutely.
Right. That pushes the good guys out.
Correct.
Right. The guys that are trying to do it right end up getting hurt.
Right.
The guys that don't give a fuck are the ones that are still covering up deductibles and still lying and still manipulating the system.
in theory, to like the ACV,
Sure,
right? The homeowner's entitled to their ACV money. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Whatever
with it.
they want
don't
with
have
it.
to repair. If they get $15,000 in ACV and they've got $5,000 in depreciation on the roof only, and you do the roof for the agreed upon RCV price, right? And then you bill for the RCV of the roof, they should release the depreciation amount associated with the roof.
but they don't.
But they should, right?
Right, they should, but they don't.
And they still should based on the current laws.
Right.
But they're not
Right.
just because they're dumb.
Well, no doubt. So you're not dealing with the most intelligent people, right? Right. So you're dealing with people that are operating within their guidelines and protecting their job. And all he knows as a desk adjuster, or she says, well, until I see evidence that they paid their deductible, I'm not releasing this. I give you a prime example of one that comes to mind. Had a little lady that didn't speak English, right? She was a little Hispanic lady in San Antonio. Between her not speaking English, between the insurance company digging their heels on the deductible law, we ended up eating $4,000 because we just got tired of making the phone calls.
Right.
On a roofed lady's house, insurance company kept the recoverable depreciation. The lady had gutters and such that had paid me for the deductible side of things, and we couldn't get the money released. And that's one of a bunch of cases that happened in. But it's much more complicated. And one of the things that
does not need to be fucking complicated.
It doesn't. But it becomes, and what happens when it turns out, hey, this is a way we can maintain cash. And it really starts getting manipulated because we've never seen that before.
Right.
Look how Xactimate gets used. Right. And manipulated.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, and maybe it's me being more of a conservative leaning type guy, that I think over-regulating, introducing new laws and making new rules just muddies the water. It makes it worse. We're attacking the look. I'm one thing I'm with, and I think Steve maybe even made mention of this in one of his talks was, it's amazing that contractors band together to go try and force regulation on other contractors. Like, we're tired of all these unlicensed guys stealing our jobs, so we go over here and we lobby for laws that, make our job harder to be contractors. Well, you stall the progression of the people that are coming up, and what happens is now the other side of it doesn't really necessarily have those same regulations. Not all places you have to be a licensed adjuster. So we're fighting, on a battlefield where it's much harder for us to retain and keep talent and people that are out there doing the right thing.
But you don't think it should be completely unregulated either.
So that isn't that the left and the right is supposed to pull each other like that?
Yeah.
Right? And isn't maybe the more extreme supposed to pull and the more extreme supposed to pull, and we're supposed to find resolution in the middle? So this goes back to what we were saying earlier. Maybe my idea of why I'm so extreme on that topic is because there's such an extreme over here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And maybe if it was a little more pulled to the middle, I wouldn't be so extreme in my view of it.
Yes.
So same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not on this big a scale, but it is a problem. And it definitely has repercussions. And when we make law, it gets real hard to undo law.
Yeah.
Right? So when you turn law into law, it's law now for a long time.
I think the real fucking problem, though, isn't even the law at this point from the story that you're telling me. It's the execution by the powers that be.
Well, man, like
or the interpretation of it. Would that be
this
more
is
fair?
why tax law has to change every year, right? Because people will figure out a way to manipulate it.
Yeah.
Right? So people will figure out a way to manipulate it.
Yeah.
And it is being manipulated. Yeah. So I'm not attacking Steve's intentions on that.
Right.
I know his intentions were to try and solve a problem.
Yeah.
I'm attacking the results of his solution.
Right.
And that's my deal on the deductible law.
Yeah.
I mean, since you asked, but
no, I mean, I want to know just because, I mean, I'm new to the market too. Right. And I do things all the right way. Yeah. Right. And I'm going to need to be prepared, for that conversation, because in my mind, it was the easy conversation you and I just had.
Yeah.
Right. This money went there. This is what we did the job for. The deductible was covered here, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, so it shouldn't be fucking hard.
It shouldn't be. I'll give you an example. it shouldn't be hard that code says all pipe boots and flashings would be replaced, but I'll be damned if I didn't send that over to State Farm 1,000 times. How about y'all send out a memo and let everybody know that pipe boots have to be replaced?
Right.
And it took us years before we start hearing that every day.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing. You have the spirit of the law and the letter of the law.
Right.
And guys are manipulating the letter of the law, and the spirit of it was, hey, let's make sure that, people are paying their deductible. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Right. As we all are. And that's what's aggravating about when Steve gets up there. He's like, well, you guys asked for this. No, we asked for people to pay their deductibles and be held accountable for it. What we didn't ask for is another tool for you guys to manipulate to keep my cash flow fucked up.
Right.
And that's what we got.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair.
So that's my grievance with it. It has nothing to do with, they can steal my jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an irrelevant point to me.
Yeah.
Right. So.
No, that's good insight. I honestly, I appreciate it. It's good insight. And I think that people listening need to know, what a worst case scenario can look like in that so that they can prepare for it.
Sure.
So that hopefully we can continue having this dialogue and we continue having these conversations, and hopefully we can continue to educate both sides so that eventually it's the fucking pipe boot conversation. And you know what I mean? Like it's such a little win.
Yeah.
Right. But if we eventually keep it rolling, hopefully, because like you said, it's very hard to change law again, right?
Yeah.
But if we continue pushing on something like this to at least get the spirit of it executed the way that it was intended, right? Then maybe that can be a win, right? That we can fight for. Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, I'm going to bring it up in any meeting that I'm in of how do we combat this, right? Because it's a problem, and it's not even that it's just a problem for us. It's a problem for the consumer as well. If we have to make them double write checks and fucking, you know what I mean?
Well, now that lady could have had a lien on her house because she didn't get paid for a roof.
Right.
Which was not what anybody wanted.
Right.
So, I mean, and we didn't do that in that scenario, and we didn't do it in other scenarios because it was it wasn't their fault. Right. So I ate it.
Yeah.
But I'm able to eat
That's
it.
the one thing. That is the one thing that people don't fucking talk about enough in this industry. And if there's insurance people watching this and whatever, but everybody talks about it. That's cost of doing business, right? When we turn in, bids or whatever it is, right? Cost of doing business. You know what another cost of business is? Eating shit.
Eating shit.
Fucking all we do is eat shit.
Yeah.
All the fucking time. And they're like, well, you're making a 40% margin or 30. Nah, fuck. End of the year, I'm fucking 12 because I had to eat shit all goddamn year because of bullshit that I had to go through. Like, that's a real thing.
My talk today, I said, the guy was like, how do we justify making 40% margins? I said, bud, if you're estimating each job at a 40% gross, you're doing good to pull out 8 to 12% at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not making that up.
No.
That's fact. Right.
Yes.
So it's like, hey man, if a guy manages
Somebody
30,
asked you, like he insinuated that a 40% margin was too much.
it wasn't that he was necessarily insinuating. He was trying to where do I need to put my, he was asking me where he needed to land.
I don't even fucking build a job if it doesn't land at 40.
Right. So we have a hard stop at 35.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, a hard stop.
We'll
sit here.
Mine's 39, but I'll talk about it at 35.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
That's literally my same, exact thing.
So, because
that's not greed. That's running a fucking business.
That's where we have to live to survive.
Yes.
Outside of that, I'm now doing it for charity.
Correct.
Right?
Because you got overhead, you got a rep. Now you're down to 8. And then at the end of the year, you're -4.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree. Oh, and by the way, let's hope that no one fucks up and hits a water line and floods a house. Right. Or, and then
you better not have one fuck up.
Better not have one major fuck up or you're gone.
Right. Because this isn't a business that there's fuck up sometimes.
There's a reason why 80-something% of roofing contractors fail within the first 3 years.
Yeah.
A large majority of it is they don't have the cash to absorb fuck ups.
Yep.
I think probably the biggest, even larger than that, is cash flow issues.
Yeah.
And we just touched on 2 things that are from that one law that fuck up the 2 main things that cause people to go belly up.
You know what I think the third fucking reason is? Contractors that don't know the difference between margin and markup.
Well, there's big... I
just recently met a few people and I'm like, so what are you billing that job? And they're like, 40%. And I'm like, okay. I go, let's run the numbers real quick.
Yeah.
And I ran it with them. I'm like, homeboy, you ain't at 40%. You marked it up 40%. You're at like a 24% margin.
Yeah, so when you take your cost and times it by 1.4, that's not a 40%.
That's not a margin, everybody. If you don't know math, let's fucking work on it. Like,
right. So that's
not sustainable.
I think you can broaden that statement to there's some people that shouldn't be running businesses.
Correct.
Right? They don't understand it.
Correct.
And not to say that they're not capable. Some of them
doesn't mean
aren't.
they can't learn. They just haven't.
Right. But this industry does have that lower barrier of entry to where people that do, and then they go and hire a bunch of people who get disgruntled and they think they can do it. And that's a curse we have that we've got to work on. Training contractors is something which brings me to why I started the consulting thing. There's not enough. There's so many people out there teaching contractors how to be contractors that aren't contractors. It's the attorneys and the PAs that are teaching contractors how to set up claims for them.
Right.
But it's not. So what happens? All the restoration contractors turned into by proxy PAs.
Yep.
Right. Instead of contractors learning how to be contractors.
Yep.
Which is what I try to focus my stuff on. Yep. That's why when you hear me talk about lump sum sales process and the things that I do, it's because like I'm trying to teach people how to be a contractor and stay in that lane. Yep. Do you need to know how the other side works? Yeah. You need to know your enemy better than yourself.
You can't run an offense if you don't know what the fucking defense is going to throw at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But, put Tom Brady at middle linebacker and see how that works out for you.
Right.
You got no business on that side of the line.
Right.
So,
but he knows what that linebacker's going to do.
He knows what he's thinking.
Right.
Exactly. So you got to know that difference. Yep. You got to know where that line's at. And I don't think I can't count on one hand how many people are out there preaching that message. Right. So that's why, look, man, I fell into being roofing famous accidentally.
Right.
I was not supposed to be. Yeah. And it's just, having conversations like this. So a lot of times when you see me and there's things you don't necessarily agree with that I'm saying, it's rooted in another thought that I'm trying to get to.
Right.
And a lot of times when I'm doing that, it's coming from those perspectives.
Yep.
It's not on the surface. A lot of those things make sense. Yes, we need a deductible law or some sort of standardization and how deductibles are collected. But you have to lead the conversation to get to where I'm trying to say, because if I just told you deductibles all this bullshit, well, you can just write me off and not pay attention.
Right.
Maybe we have to, and that's just one example, but that's why going back to where we started, I end up in so much controversy is because it's within that controversy that we start learning and forming opinions and applying that in our life. And that's what it's about for me. It has nothing to do with me wanting to fight on Facebook. No. Give two shits.
I know. I know.
So that's where it's at.
I get it, man. I love it. So the way that we end all of these episodes is I always give the floor back to the guest to kind of wrap something up, because I know that whenever I go into an interview, right, I always kind of have something in the back of my head, like I hope we get to talk about this, right? Or maybe it's we touched on it, but we didn't go as in depth as maybe you wanted to. And I always want to give the floor back for the last 2, 3, 4 minutes. If there's something that you wanted to retouch on, and make sure that the audience walks away with, whether it's just knowing Brad or knowing something that you're passionate about, care about, whatever. But I always give the floor back to the guest for that.
We touched on a lot, and I don't think that there's anything that we necessarily left off the table. If anything, I want to say I appreciate your format. I was there when you were trying to figure out the name of it, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this is going to be good, right? and it definitely needs to be. Your audience needs to expand, because you do dig and you do get to the real meat of things, right? It gets taxing running around doing the same thing over and over. And I love the idea that you get to really dig into topics and there's no boundaries to what you say. Right. We need more of that in our life. We get so accustomed to when we don't like something that someone says, we just block them.
Right.
Right. That's not the way we should operate. Right. We should operate with understanding. Yep. We should operate with, and hey man, if you just feel like someone's an idiot, you can ignore them. But I had a revelation one time in an AA meeting from a homeless guy with no shoes on. You can learn something from anybody, mm-hmm. right? Pay attention and listen, because people do have a place that they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And this spot and your format, I want more people to pay attention to and replicate, because your format opens up the door, right? And it's not like this place where you got to come and be something different or put on a face, right? That's the whole premise behind it. I love that about what you do, man. And I appreciate you having me today.
I appreciate you saying that. You know, what's funny, to wrap up that thought, was I was actually on the phone this morning with Josh Bigger.
Okay.
And because we're going to interview him at IRE.
Fantastic.
And I was literally talking to him. I was, no joke, he called me while I was taking a shit. And I was like, how more appropriate would it be to answer his phone call on the toilet, right? Yeah. So I did. So Josh, and I told him that. So he knows that I was taking a shit when he called. And but he asked me the question, and I was actually surprised he asked it. But he goes, you want me to show up as Josh, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you don't want Best Damn Roofer here. And I'm like, no, motherfucker. I want Josh, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to get to know Josh.
Right.
And to your point, thank you for saying it. We need to get to know more of each other as Josh, as Brad, as Eric, as Paul, as Steve. Right? Like, we need to get to know each other as human beings and as people. We can disagree. We can maybe not like what the other one does for a living, or have a disagreement about, you know, politics or whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter. But are we taking the time to be humans and get to know each other and get to know where you're coming from and maybe why your opinion was formed and shaped the way that it was, and get to spend this time to dig in a little bit and become closer and become better friends and have a deeper connection, right? So, dude, I'm so happy that you came here today.
Yeah, man, thanks.
I'm so happy that we got to spend this time together. I hope that it gives us an opportunity to talk more and spend more time together. And I hope that you know that anytime there's anything that you need from me, I'm here for you, brother.
Same here, man.
And I know the same for you. So, Brad, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please share this shit. Get it to everybody that you know. Hopefully it can help somebody. And remember, everyone, be authentic. Get the fuck out.
You can't be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic.